Hey, this is Gary Collins and Heath Squier of the Primal Show, and today we're going to talk about consuming fat and how fat doesn't make you fat, but consuming too many calories will. That's a good topic. I know we've talked about it in the past. And what are your feelings on that? I mean, I know you deal with it, you've dealt with it personally yourself, and you get questions on it.
Yeah, it's specifically it's like you can consume fat. You're going to be consuming more fat eating a paleo primal kind of diet. But what I wanted to talk about today was taking in too many calories above and beyond what your metabolism is burning. Because there's so many people, if you look around, that are in the paleo and primal lifestyle. You look at the way they look and they're still puffy, or they're still not at an ideal weight. And I hear it all the time. It's like, yeah, I'm still trying to, lose that extra bit of weight. And really what it is it's fine tuning your caloric intake to be under what your metabolism is burning. And just because you go paleo primal doesn't mean the rules of calories go out the window. And so above and beyond looking at what carbs and reducing the amount of carbs and reducing your starch, you also got to take in your total calorie allowance, because your metabolism is only going to burn so many calories. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, yeah, and that's where me and you are a little different too, because in a lot of my writings, I don't preach calorie counting because I don't think it's necessary if you know what you're doing. But I also say don't throw it out the window either.
Right.
Just don't completely ignore calories. But I think it's important for people to understand what metabolism means, and it's converting food into cellular energy. It's the efficiency of that process. So the more efficient your metabolism is, the more efficient it is to turn that food into energy, usable energy. So that's why I always tell people your metabolism changes not only throughout the day, it's cyclical. Depending how you're eating, how you're exercising, cortisol levels, it's always moving. It's a moving target, so it's never static. And that's why you still have to pay attention to calories. I mean, you just can't go, well, I won't count them at all, and I'm just going to eat 80% of my macronutrients in fat today and expect it to work. And it's a little more complicated than that too. And me and you have talked about, if you're eating a high fat diet, more of a keto diet, but you're still not watching your carbs, it's a perfect storm. Or if your metabolism isn't correctly rebooted and you've become a fat burner and you're still a sugar burner, you're actually going to store fat at a higher rate because your body doesn't have the ability to access the stored fat to burn as energy. So you always have to watch your carbohydrates and your sugar, because if you eat sugar and carbohydrates, well, sugar's a carbohydrate, and fat, it's the perfect storm, because you're raising your insulin levels, which inhibits your ability to use stored fat as energy, and then you turn around and you store what you just eaten as fat. So yeah, it's kind of a double whammy, and I tell people that because people get confused. Don't you agree on they can eat a ton of fat because everyone says fat is good, but they don't realize that, well, yeah, but you still can't go out and eat a donut or a bagel because it's gonna basically inhibit what you're trying to do.
Right. And what you're actually trying to do is switch from burning the starches and the sugar over to burning fat. And you're going to burn fat, you're going to see a reduction in fat. So by going ketogenic, you're burning fat as energy instead of that starch or sugar basis. If you keep consuming starch and sugar, guess what? Your body doesn't switch over and start burning that fat layer of your body, and you're not going to have as much energy. So it's kind of a tricky subject, I think, because yes, you are going to burn more calories by switching your body's metabolism over to burning fat as your primary source of energy. But at the same time, it's still going to only burn so many calories. And yes, you're going to burn more
Yeah.
calories, but a lot of people don't realize that calories from fat, it's 9 times whatever amount of fat grams you're taking in. So it's a lot more calories. So if you're still consuming starch and sugar, you're not going to be able to get the added benefit of boosting your metabolism to burn that fat as energy. So does that kind of make
Yeah.
sense?
Well, yeah, and understanding that it's, 1 gram of protein equals 4 calories, 1 gram of carbohydrate equals 4 calories, 1 gram of fat equals 9 calories. But all calories are not created equal. And that is
Yes.
something that we have just learned, we've learned recently that a calorie is not a calorie. You can count your calories, but if you're eating them in a proportion of, say, a higher carbohydrate diet, those carbohydrates are going to be utilized and burnt differently than calories from protein and fat. They all work differently cellularly in your body. And I think that's where people get lost. Actually, I saw a comment on a YouTube video that we were talking about earlier. And one of the last comments was ketosis equals sickness. Your brain needs glucose to survive. And I was like, wow, what a misinformed statement that is right there. We've talked about ketosis too. Ketosis is a misused term because people don't get the definition. Ketosis is an overabundance of ketone bodies in the bloodstream. It's more than you can utilize at a given time. So you don't want to be in ketosis all the time because it will become toxic in a sense. You don't want to always have too many ketone bodies floating around in your bloodstream. You want to kind of have a balance. You'll go through a ketosis state here and there, but you don't want to run in that all the time. And also, I think when you're talking about glucose, he completely didn't understand the concept of gluconeogenesis, which is the conversion of fats to glucose. Or triglycerides, glyceride or whatever is spliced off, and that is used to convert into glucose. And also protein. So I think a lot of people misunderstand the biochemistry and how our body works, that we have backup systems for glucose. We just don't get glucose from carbohydrates and sugar. That's not how it works.
Yeah. No, I just there's so much confusion, and it is kind of tricky how, you know, it's a very fine line, because when you want to get lean and you want to start seeing your six pack, and you want to start seeing results, and you want to get that lean kind of hardened look where you have muscle definition, guess what you do? You take it, you eat healthy, you eat smaller portions more, throughout the day, and it's primarily protein mixed with a good amount of fat and almost no carbs and no sugar. Or if you are going to have carbs, get them from vegetables. It's not that hard. And it's crazy. I mean, so many people are like, well, I'm not taking in starch, yet they're consuming a lot of, guess what? Bananas. And bananas are filled with starch. And bananas, there's nothing wrong with a banana in moderation, like a very small, like a half a banana, maybe a full banana. They're loaded with potassium and all these great things. But at the same time, you need to reduce your overall sugar and starch intake, and people go overboard. It happens all the time, and then they're wondering why they're not getting the results. And
and that's what we both people are confused, and it's not their fault. I mean, it's partially the food industry has brainwashed us in that carbohydrates come from grains, starchy foods, and truly that nature's carbohydrate is vegetables and fruits. And fruit would be something hard to find, and it would be seasonal, so you wouldn't have access to it all the time. And traditional fruits are in the form of berries, which are lower glycemic anyway, higher in fiber. And yeah, you see all these paleo recipes with bananas, and banana pancakes and banana this, and the dessert's banana, and you're eating 3-4 bananas a day. That's going to completely screw up what you're trying to do. And I always tell my clients this: it's a simple philosophy. There is no nutrient that you can get in fruit that you can't get in a vegetable. A vegetable will have all the nutrients that a fruit will have. So always balance that. Don't go out and, what's the first thing people do on a diet today? They go eat a ton of fruit, right?
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. And, really, if you think about it, the amount of fruit that you should be consuming should just fit into the palm of your hand. That's it.
Yep.
You don't need very much. Have 6 or 7 blueberries. Don't go overboard, and then you're going to be okay, because you can consume a certain amount of sugar naturally from fruit and not completely wreck your blood sugar. But it's just moderating it. That's all. And there's too many recipes that are going overboard, and there's too many recipes that are using way too much fat. I mean, because not everybody is exercising enough to burn off all the excess fat. And there's so many people that are preaching, yeah, you can consume all the fat you want, but then you look at these people, and are they in ideal shape? No.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just rampant. And at the same time, I kind of taken this new philosophy that we should all be eating like diabetics that control their insulin levels naturally without medication. And and if you look at a lot of those people, they're fit. I know quite a few that are they're lean, they're healthy, they take no insulin levels, and they're controlling it through food, and it can be done. Sometimes it's extremely hard because some people are really sensitive, but it can be done, and a lot of people do it, and a lot of people are getting a lot better by eating in this fashion is by just focusing on meats, fruits, vegetables, very small amount of fruits, but it's not that hard.
Yeah, well, and that's understanding too that fat is in nature. You know, you're getting that from your protein sources. Your animal protein is always going to contain fat with it. There are some leaner proteins, like if you're eating squirrel, for example, or rabbit, they tend to be leaner. And there's been studies shown that if you eat nothing but rabbit protein, you can actually poison yourself by too much nitrogen. But that's very rare. You know, most meats you eat are going to have natural fats surrounding them. So by over consuming and using, it's like I've watched people just go and grab the coconut oil and they cook their eggs and they just huge scoops just pour it in there. And I'm thinking, well, there's already fat in the egg yolk.
Right.
You know, you already have it there because everything in nature, it's a balance. It's the protein source. It always contains fat, and a fat will always contain a protein source with it for the
Yeah.
most part, you know, and overdoing it, anything like we talk about, moderation, think, use your head. What would you, as I explain in my books, what would you find in nature? That's how you want to mimic your diet, you know? And I have an article that I'll be posting on my blog today about calories. And, you know, it'll be called Fat Calories and Weight Loss. And I'll have the link up on here. And it goes in depth on how calories work and how you should balance them and understand them. You know, because what a pound of fat is 3,500 calories. You know, and we always hear that. So you have to, in order to lose a pound of fat, you have to burn 3,500 calories. No, that is not how it works. It's a little more complicated than that. Your body's not going to just say, I'm going to drop a pound of fat because you burnt 3,500 calories.
Yeah.
It's never going to be a perfect number.
Yeah, I think, there's a couple different dynamics here. One is you have, your initial push, like if you do have too much weight or you're trying to burn fat, you have that initial reduction in your total calorie count while working out really hard. Once you've reached your goal, you can allow more calories because your metabolism's operating at a higher rate. Because if you
Yeah.
have less fat and you have more muscle, guess what? You're burning more calories. So if you still have too much fat on your body and you're consuming more calories, you're doing yourself a disservice. So until you've
Yeah.
reached that point where you have the muscle and the fat's gone, don't consume an overabundance of calories. It's really simple. From that perspective, just think about it. Unless you
Yeah.
are at your ideal weight and you're just totally yoked, don't consume an overabundance of calories.
Well, not only that, but we've also found that fat, brown fat is what we call it, is actually acts as a hormone, and that our fat cells in our body communicate. They're constant communicating as far as fat storage. So our body's always going through this kind of ebb and flow of energy cycles and how to store fat and when to store it. And it's because that would be a survival, mechanism is we would have to store fat under high stress or during certain conditions in order to survive.
Right.
And it's just like winter. Why would people and even animals gorge themselves, find all the fruit they can before winter? Well, because it has fructose in it, and fructose causes it makes fat storage kind of like turbocharge. So you store fat at a high rate, and so you would gorge yourself on fruit in order to get that fat layer, in order to have that energy to get you through winter, and that's what it would be used for. That's why there's always, we talk about seasonal eating too, which is complicated. I wouldn't want anyone to jump right into that. That's something you can put as a goal, is to mimic the seasons and eat food seasonally that would be available, because that's how our bodies are truly designed.
Right.
But yeah.
What do you? What's your philosophy on like exercising? Like basically going into the gym first thing in the morning. Basically, maybe just having just a little bit of protein, so you've really consumed very little calories, and you're going in and you're going to burn like 1,000 calories at the gym. Do you find that's a good way to put on lean muscle?
I've experimented a lot with the over decades of different training times, and morning does tend to work for fat loss a little better. It just depends. For me now, in the what state my body's in, it really doesn't make a huge difference when I work out. I like to work out in the morning by preference, just because to get my day started. But
Right.
for most people, because if you're eating correctly and you're in a fasting mode in the morning still, because you're burning fat because you've slept through, you're not ingesting any calories. And if you go to the gym, well, you're going to use that fat energy even more, because you're in a state of fasting, and then you eat your first meal. And for people starting out, I have noticed it definitely makes a difference in weight loss and being able to put on lean muscle.
Now, for men too, our testosterone levels are higher in the morning. Have you ever read anything about women's testosterone levels? Which testosterone is made by the ovaries in women, but like, have you ever read anything like about testosterone levels being higher in the morning for women? I mean, it makes sense for men to work out in the morning because our levels
Yeah.
are much higher. But I didn't know if you had ever read anything about that because I'm sure people would be interested.
Well, it's a tricky state, because in the morning when you first wake, your cortisol levels are at their highest too, which will actually inhibit, the use of testosterone and actually raise estrogen. So it's a little tricky. Our bodies, like I said, we're just kind of in the infancy of understanding how they truly work. A lot of scientists will tell you, and a lot of supposed paleo experts will tell you they've got it all figured out and they're full of it. We're nowhere near. We're scratching the surface right now. And so I tell people, don't get too wrapped up into that. Just do what feels right for you, and you'll get good results. For some people, working out in the morning works, but we're all different. Some people have better results working out in the evening or at lunchtime. Some people do better fasting. Some people can't fast. It's always moving target, and that's why you always have to figure out what works for you. I would say concern yourself about the biochemistry and getting that fine tuned, unless you're a bodybuilder or a competitive athlete. I don't know. I don't know if I would worry about that so much. But yeah, I mean, for women, my women clients, I really don't. I just don't notice a big difference. Everyone just seems to do better in the morning. It could be psychosomatic. It could be many factors.
Yeah, they're kind of more
Who knows?
rested and have more energy to kind of have a better workout kind of thing.
Yeah, most people were long work day. The end of the day, they're tired. They may not work out as hard. I notice I work out much harder in the morning than I do in the afternoon sometimes, but it
Right.
just depends.
Right. Oh, that makes perfect sense. Well, I think we've kind of covered the basis. Why doesn't everybody check out the link that we're going to provide to Gary's blog today? Feel free to email us your questions about this subject or any others. We will address them on the air. You can reach us at Gary at theprimalshow.com and myself, Heath at theprimalshow.com. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Each time we post a new video, you'll be notified, and you can listen and get informed. So thanks so much, Gary.
Yeah, talk to you later.